here we go. What is up, everyone? I am Charlie Shrem, and you are listening and watching Untold Stories, where twice a week I get to dive deep with some of crypto's coolest freaking people, and some of them are leaders too, to find out how this movement truly came to be. Where did we come from? Where are we going? How do we get here? What is Bitcoin? What is crypto? Why is it important? Who are some of the people involved? I'm joined today by two amazing people. Patrick Stanley, you're the founder and CEO of Freehold. And when I was doing research of your project, I was like, wow, community as a model, that's actually brilliant. And I'm excited to talk to you about some other topics. I'm also excited to welcome, so thank you for coming on the show today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I'm also excited to welcome my good friend, Phil Lebowski, Filet Mignon. Phil, thanks for coming on the show today as well.
No problem. What's up, everybody?
Phil, you're like the only Canadian in America right now.
Seems to be true.
I don't know how you got here.
Through Barbados, actually.
Well, welcome to sunny Sarasota, Florida, and it's good to have you, and it's good to have everyone. You've been doing a lot of OTC work, like crypto and people buying and selling. I see on your phone you're doing it all the time. You have people buying and selling and getting involved. You're like a man on the ground, so it's great to have some of your insight. Patrick, you embarked on one of the boldest crypto-related ideas I have ever seen in the space. And not only coming up with a whole new consensus algorithm that is community driven, it's not based on proof of stake, it goes even farther. And I'll be honest with you, I am not a believer in proof of stake. There, I've said it. My mind is open. I'm a big fan of proof of work, but proof of stake, I still believe that it's proof of stake. The whole model could potentially defy the law of physics. That's why one of the reasons it doesn't work. But what you came up with here, the ability for people to earn Bitcoin instead of always having to buy it all the time, because that message changed. Why did you see that as a problem? And then what did you decide to do?
Yeah, well, first, just to make sure I'm super clear, I didn't invent any specific consensus mechanism, but I did essentially formulate a new model for getting folks to earn cryptocurrency as a way of working for a project. So if you kind of squint your eyes, blockchains sort of look like a cap table register where you're able to give shares like ownership in in a specific idea or startup. But the reality is, when you actually look at the people who own cryptocurrency, most of them are actually just free riders. They buy cryptocurrency and then hope that a small group of people will make it more valuable and more useful. What we've done is we've said, okay, what if you actually just surgically carve out the group of people who are not only hodlers and in effect investors, but also the same folks that do work to make the protocol or the token more valuable and more useful. And so, in the same way, you'd want investors and startup employees working in success of the startup of an idea. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a new business model whereby community founders leverage their community in a very economical and sort of potent way, instead of necessarily having to go to Sandhole Road, raise millions of dollars, and then just hire like 3 to 5 people. So the difference between, let's say, doing business development or sales with 300 people, like community members who have skin in the game, who can create a formal system for making out-group arguments to convert people into integrating your crypto, into building with your crypto, or just holding your crypto. I think is a much more powerful model, and I think I'm experimenting with it, and I'm feeling. I mean, I feel very bullish on the idea. So far, we have a lot of traction, and I can tell you more.
This is what I love about this industry, is that a lot of the times the people that I talk to and the founders and CEOs of companies, and I want to ask you, you call this the user staker model, but it's so interesting that you have people who are founding companies not just to make revenue, but essentially to prove your own internal life thesis.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there's definitely a balance between like building something that's cool and building something that's needed. Um, when I think about, I mean, the cool aspect of this is, um, when you think about company formation, you think about something like Facebook. Why was it that only a handful of people really got wealthy on Facebook leading up to the IPO, versus its users starting to gain ownership of Facebook as it grew. It might have even, I mean, not Facebook's an outlier, but
I
like,
have a great example for you, and something that I feel personally like spurned by, and maybe you can tell me how in your model this would be different. But let's look at like Airbnb as a company. Another perfect example. They're about to go through an IPO. They're actually in the underwriting stages. Airbnb's built on their community. I mean, they were probably one of the first companies outside of crypto to realize very early on that their community of hosts and guests, but really hosts, would really make up their whole business model is that community of hosts. I'm a super host actually. I have 2 units and I'm dedicated. I don't host on any other platforms. I don't go on a VRBO HomeAway. I'm loyal to Airbnb and Airbnb repays that loyalty. But here's your perfect example. They have an IPO. Airbnb emails me saying, "Hey, as a host, you can have up to a $500 pre-IPO shares." I'm like,
yeah,
okay, what am I? $500, like, what is that going to do for me? Here, I made Airbnb to where it is today. I want to have a stake in its future. And then they tell me that it's oversubscribed and I can't even be involved. I'm pissed off. Here I am. When you search Sarasota, Florida, my 2 units are the first 2 units that come up. I'm undying loyalty to Airbnb company. But where's the reward? How in your with Freehold, if like this all was a different world that we lived in and everything started anew and fresh, how could a company like that potentially like, or an influencer who started a company like that or a project or idea kind of like keep their hosts or their users or their everyone happy?
yeah, sure. I mean, well, with the Airbnb model, what they have is data lock-in and their rating system. So those are the things that keep. I mean, obviously they have like good
Yeah,
UX, right? But they have a network
the
effect.
rating system.
Yeah, the rating system keeps folks in. The network effect keeps folks in. And I think in the in the future, like with the freehold model, you wouldn't necessarily have data lock-in. You can have your own rating system where you sort of um, attribute, or what's the word, attest, to someone's rating, and that could be something that the user owns. But folks are actually locked in not by data, not by necessarily their rating, but they're locked in by their stake. Essentially, um, what you could do is you could have like a proof of hodl access control mechanism that aligns folks within the system. So maybe you have some money at stake that shows you have like skin in the game. You're an owner in Airbnb as like an idea,
Mm.
and that gives you access into the Airbnb community. So you're if you were anti Airbnb, you wouldn't be buying its shares or its tokens, for example. Um, and I think the economic alignment early on, um, essentially what it does is it leverages essentially an underutilized group of people. So before, let's say like with the Kickstarter model, with Kickstarter, for example, this is actually even closer to Freehold than the Airbnb model, but it's still, we can kind of examine how it's kind of not fully aligned for the end user. So with the Kickstarter model, people who want a product, they put up money, um, then a small team builds that product and then gives it to the people who backed it. But the people who backed it took a leap of faith. They essentially
Yeah.
had to commit to a service. They committed to the idea that this thing would be built in the future. Um, they have no skin in the game. They don't they don't necessarily own. They're not like a user staker. They're not working. They're not able to even
It's a
to be
future product or service.
yeah,
Yeah.
they can't really be activated as much as someone who is like an employee of a company to make outgroup arguments. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to move the sort of general public who like orbits specific communities to become an active member. It's almost like the Mormon Church, right? They go out to countries and make outgroup arguments to convert to Mormonism. You'd
Yeah.
essentially want this for company building or protocol building or community building.
I wasn't going to use it as a religion as an example, but that essentially is what it is. Some listeners who are thinking right now may say to themselves, well, sometimes it's those scams or like Ponzi's or projects that need that religious fervor like XRP army to go out there and be that, whereas some other projects don't need that. What you're saying is that regardless, every company or every project or every founder or really any service needs to take control and be in relationship on both ways with its community.
Yeah, definitely. I think I think essentially leveraging community is leveraging code, capital, and media, and those are very very high leverage sort of aspects to leverage. The problem is most startups don't necessarily do that, and most startups don't include the community in a way that gives them skin in the game. We developed something that's I've done a Google search on this. I haven't seen it anywhere. We've developed something that I find very interesting within Freehold. We call it hodl score, and so what it
Mm.
does is it tracks the earnings of folks that have earned within a freehold. So you can see how much someone earned, but then it also tracks how much and how long they've hodled for. It's almost like the it's almost
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the mirror image of a credit score, except for it tracks earnings and assets. And I think
Yeah.
this is like a potentially good way to create labor markets in the future.
It's a great thing. In fact, I've talked about it on this show back in the 2017 days.
Mm,
One of my internal spreadsheets on rating a project that I was going to put some money in
mm.
was this like community score, community sub score. And I almost want to like go through it with you because you've probably looked at dozens of projects and companies and communities. So maybe I can kind of pick your brain on what you look at as successful versus not successful. But one of the things that I looked at, a metric that I looked at, I called it TIL, token investor loyalty. And it's how long you can see on chain through some metrics how long its holders are holding. And that has like that's a quantifiable number.
Yeah, there's a few inputs. So just brief background. My background is in like finance and lending. So like I've sort of deconstructed FICO and understand, what makes up a credit score, how much things are weighted, etc. And so that gave me like a little bit of inspiration going into creating this HODL score. Some of the inputs are amount earned, time since first HODL token, time since last, first earned token, time since last earned crypto, um, hodl rate. So how much have you liquidated over time? And then, and
So it's
then,
an individual scoring, like a person.
Yeah, an
yes,
individual.
you can do
Oh, wow.
individuals. You can also do companies. Interestingly, for individuals, and then you can also weight, how many tokens they've held. So, if you allow for some seasoning, a story appears, which is this person has earned. You might even have a memory function
Yeah,
where,
narrative and context. What happened?
yeah, what happened? Did the token price go down in relation to Bitcoin, or did it go up in relation to Bitcoin over which period of time, and for how many tokens did this happen? You can essentially map, like, give this like a few years of seasoning, maybe even just a couple, and you can start mapping like, who is worth investing in from not just like a, a pseudo employee standpoint, but almost potentially even like a pseudo investor standpoint. It'll become like very clear which people uh, find great projects that stand the test of time, because everything is literally on the
Wow,
blockchain.
that's brilliant.
Thanks.
I went to a conference. Phil, you're with us in Vegas not too long ago, right before COVID. And do you remember Voyager had that big wall of all the different time like things that happen in crypto? It was like a big part that you could.
They had a timeline.
They had a big timeline of the past 10 years of like famous events, but it wasn't just famous. It was like a million events. And you can go with a marker and actually write out your personal history overlaid. And that's kind of what you're talking about here.
Yeah.
But more so, but more so,
To illustrate, that helps. People were able to come up with a Sharpie and write when they bought.
What
Uh,
they bought, how they bought, yeah, everything.
Yeah, for sure. And I think my one of the advisors to the Freehold, Balaji Srinivasan, he says something along the lines of first people use crypto for payments and for like store value and all that. Next, people are going to use crypto for truth. And what's you know just a little bit of applied knowledge to like what blockchains are useful for, uh, and and kind of um, and kind of like dogged persistence, I think could actually sort of like whip up a labor market that hasn't existed before. In a kind of a similar way that having like a FICO credit score allows folks to apply for loans in more places than just their own bank quicker. So they can get credit cards. They might be able to apply for a mortgage on like Rocket Mortgage or whatever. What you're doing is you're allowing for credit markets to expand by virtue of getting them priced, and getting them rated and therefore priced. How do you sort of underwrite this? It's like a tool to make decisions easier. In the same way, there's a massive group of people that want to earn crypto. They can't afford to invest in every project. They can understand what's going on in the project. They've beyond just the white papers that they might be a part of the community, and they just wish they could invest more. Um, and I see like this is like a giant networked community of people that want to be high impact, high leverage. They're they're building applications. They're creating YouTube videos. They're creating blog posts. They're just creating content, like educating people and converting. Um, yeah, and they're building a reputation along the way. So like someone I kind of have the scale on a very similar scale to what you would think is like a good credit score versus bad credit score. So like an 850 hodl score is like you're an insane league.
Oh, you
In
kept the same scoring mechanism as FICO?
I didn't keep the same scoring mechanism, TM, but
But like
I
the number range or
the
whatever.
numbers the numbers are within the same range, just so people could understand. Okay, if I have a 650,
I still haven't figured out my damn credit score.
I got some work to do. If you want to talk about that after the podcast, I'm happy to help you. There are
No,
some
I write letters because I have like
wait, what?
well well first
I
of
read
all,
letters.
I went
What
to
I
prison
do?
for 2 years, so like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had this whole like hang like a cliffhanger. All the collectors were like, "What the hell happened to him?" So then they
yeah,
just killed my credit, but like for like $84 cell phone bill, and so I spent years on the phone with these companies. Like I went to jail. Please,
yeah.
I will pay it in full. Just take it off my credit score. I can't
And,
open up
and the
my damn
rabbi and the
bank account.
rabbi was like, no,
Yeah,
you,
no.
you owe this debt.
Some lady on the phone, even though you owed it, she's like, "You're being punished for paying it late."
yeah,
I said, "I went to jail. Please."
Yeah,
even
I
if
mean,
you
yeah.
pain on
We,
your
we don't necessarily need to go through old stuff, but I was around during that time, and that was
How did
that
you get
was
into crypto? Yeah, tell me the backstory.
yeah, yeah. Good good segue. You know, when I just graduated from university, and I had not really gone down the rabbit hole of what makes money. And so that was kind of, I think a lot of people have the same story. They found out about Bitcoin, started questioning, you know, they started questioning things like, why does the Fed get to create money whenever it wants to? Is this Bitcoin kind of like a lower entropy carrier of information, and therefore maybe a good sort of substrate to
Oh, that's a
build,
good.
kind of like like a new network state or an internet society on? And I still think that is the case. But some of the folks that introduced me were Andreas Antonopoulos and you. I'd
Oh,
say like
awesome.
probably half of the educational material I first got exposed to was talks that you had given. I think you did a really great job of regardless of whether Bitcoin as money, as like, unit of exchange is still the same narrative. You did a great job of converting people into Bitcoin, and appreciating it for what it is. So I have a lot. I have you to thank for getting into this industry. I appreciate it.
Thank you for telling me that, because I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you,
sure.
Charlie. Same goes for me.
Thank you, Phil. Uh I guess I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time. And every morning I think a little bit more about this. And I think it was because uh I found Bitcoin and I found Satoshi, and those that very small, very fervent Bitcoin community back then. And when I mean fervent, I mean like borderline crypto anarchist, anarcho capitalist. Now we say crypto anarchist, but at a time when I had just been excommunicated from a community that I was born and raised from. So I was like searching for a community to attach myself to. And this was that community. Uh, other, it didn't just become, and maybe you can dissect this because you study community, but it didn't just become a community of friends and people that I can work with and bounce ideas off of. But Bitcoin and crypto, or Bitcoin, what crypto became, but Bitcoin at first became my family. And in fact, Roger Ver was my father. Eric Voorhees, my big brother. Some people be my cousins and my uncles and aunts, and I would look up to some people as grandparents. Is it David Schwartz from Ripple? It's my grandpa or whatever. So like, I can make fun of Ripple because they're my friend started it. I always say Vitalik is my little brother. All these. I remember literally teaching Vitalik how to eat lobster in a New York, like he didn't know how. The guy found a theorem. He'd never done a lobster before.
I'm sure he knows how to eat lobster.
Yeah, I think he knows how to eat lobster now. But these were crazy, crazy years back then. Especially the community was a lot tighter because it was survival, and it was all or nothing. It still is for me, all or nothing.
Yeah, like I definitely can appreciate that. I feel like it was. It was, and I mean, still is to a certain degree, but definitely more back then. It was a bunch of fringe characters,
Yeah.
and it was like the land of misfit toys, and kind of hyper. I'd say like there were like some hyper libertarian kind of folks. There were hyper idealistic folks. But when you read books about like homebrew computer club, there's some interesting quotes in there that really seem similar to today. Um,
You mentioned something. You said what makes money money, and it's something that
oh,
uh, everyone is still trying to figure out. Phil's thinking about it right now. I'm thinking about it. But in terms of what makes money money, um,
Or better yet, what makes crypto crypto?
what makes crypto crypto, and that's what I'm trying to understand, because you're talking about thousands of years of value, and his money is hardwired into our brains, or even like hundreds of years in this country. And then it's always been known that value can only be two things. Value can be created by a market, by people, over the course of a very long period of time, and has many years of bedrock and foundation. Or money could be by federal decree, fiat, and we all know that works or doesn't work or whatever. But that's what money is, to me at least. How is it that we've created such like that small group of misfits, of geeks and nerds and weirdos in the past 10 years have created this new global money? Like, Phil, what do you think?
I mean, no one really knows where this is all going, and I think in the last bull run, in the last couple of months, we're finally starting to catch the attention of people that are regulating us, and I think that's what really makes money
Oh,
nowadays.
that clarity, yeah.
Before, I believe the 70s, we were based on the gold standard. We're not anymore. The only reason we believe in the $100 bill is because we all believe in it.
Nixon really screwed us all with that and pulling us off that gold standard.
Right. Depends what school of thought you're with. I mean, there's neoliberals now that I think they call it
MMT.
Yeah, exactly. I was
Yeah.
just reading a book called Money by. Anyways,
I saw a school of thought that said that we value money too high, and what America should do is triple the money supply very quickly.
yeah, and they
Just
could just print it whenever they want.
debase this a theory says that the US should just debase its currency and flood the world with dollars because the world will have no alternative to have to use the dollars, and the flooding of dollars will create this accelerated hyper growth K-shaped situation where the haves will have a shit ton more and the have-nots will have nothing. That's literally what the theory doesn't say, but anyone who knows how money works will come up with their own saying, like realize that that's what that's and it's like the neoliberals that are one that are coming up with that.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Patrick, but I believe it has something to do with the unemployment rate and us not being at full capacity. While we have that deficit, some will argue that it's okay to print money to pay for your own defaults because people are trying to grow. It's when everyone has a job and there is no more up where that thinking doesn't work. But for now, I mean, especially after coronavirus, might as well print more. What do you think,
I
Patrick?
mean, I look at the economy as an information system, and I think when you look at like the Federal Reserve printing more money, what that is putting noise into a channel. So you're instead of sending predictive signal, you're sending noise. You're essentially you're 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 signaling that the system is less predictable than it once was. And I think for whom that's important to manage their own economies are countries like China, countries like Japan, like just folks that actually buy our that need to use our dollars. Um, the Yeah, I mean, and also one comment on like the what is money, what makes money money. You know, F.A. Hayek has this concept of the sort of continuum of liquidity, and what that says is essentially all assets are essentially money. It's just the ability to convert them and like barter for them. We use money as a substitute for barter, so we can do transactions more seamlessly. But
And that
as
would make
liquidity,
money an anomaly, essentially. The money that we use, like the physical dollar bill, shouldn't really exist because that's like a paper extension of credit, kind of like due on someone else. But money, if you know what you said is the value is true, like this cup of coffee is money. This is what we barter with. You want this coffee, I have this coffee, have a nice day. I'm not
yeah,
using a substitute.
yeah. The only thing is that exactly. It's like it's a poor. Yeah, I guess it's like when it comes to like easily fungible, um, you know, uh, sort of unit of exchange. Money is pretty great if you're working all. I mean, if you have a hot coffee, that's
Yeah.
like a radioactive isotope that's decaying. No one wants a cold coffee later, and they don't want to reheat it. So you have to like sell it as it's hot. So that's a little bit obviously a little bit different. I think like
Sure.
real estate, stocks, crypto, cash, like all that is on the continuum of liquidity. And yeah, I don't know what point I was trying to make with that, but just essentially saying like um,
No, you've made me start to think in tangents. That's
yeah,
that's as you're talking. Um, so how do you create then to bring it all back together? How does a community create that value?
sure. Well, when people apply knowledge to a project, um, they're increasing the value of that project. So like with a startup, for example, people you have a team of engineers who essentially at zero marginal cost they're adding knowledge to a project. So like the application works better, an application works better. It could it has less bugs. It does what it's supposed to do. Then your marketing team is installing the idea into people's minds, and so when the idea is installed in people's minds, you're building like the brand. You're getting folks to take money out of their pocket, pay for it, etc.
Establishing trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, um, and I think when you think about kind of like when you think about like what a firm does and what it's trying to do is it's trying to grow. It's trying to sell more product. It's trying to become a better product. And the question I'm looking to solve is, can you essentially create a firm from a community, and can you leverage more people? Can you leverage more people, pay them in um, cryptocurrency? Can you have more impact? Can you have more impact than you could in a traditional startup by leveraging community rather than um, than mostly full time salaried workers paid for by venture capitalists?
That has been proven. It's just been very difficult to do without this, distributed, trustless ledger system that we have called blockchain. Without that, it's the costs and the inefficiencies of doing what you said. Really, all my guests really on the show, eh, to do anything that they're talking about doing without this technology, we wouldn't really be able to do it. And I think that's kind of like the point of why I do this show.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of funny. Like people approach crypto from, I think people approach crypto from different lenses. Sometimes you know, they want to treat cryptocurrency like it's the unit of exchange. Sometimes they want to recreate the financial system. Um, and I think it's really important to look at, you know, look at it for what it is.
I agree.
I think, you know, blockchains aren't meant to be full scale databases. They're not very fat. It's difficult to get them to be very fast, but also very secure. It's like, okay, well, you know, you don't really need a cap table to be lightning speed.
Yeah.
You're right. And people store their wealth in things like company stock. They store their wealth in things like Bitcoin.
They keep their wealth in vaults too that are only open on weekdays, not federal
Yeah,
holidays. So yeah, people don't need speed is not I don't think speed is important as security.
yeah. So what's kind of your mission in crypto right now? Like you're doing this podcast. Um, you've been in this space for almost a decade,
Mm.
and
Oh God, don't
um,
say that.
yeah, well,
I think I'm
I'm
looking for relevancy now. No, I'm
yeah.
joking.
I think you're pretty relevant.
I why one of the reasons I do this show is why I started this show, why I did the show, why I do the show now, and why I'll do the show in the future is always going to change. I started the show for therapeutic reasons. That's
Mm,
no longer the case. Now I do the show because I love to do it. It's my income, feed my family this way. It's my full time job. This show, and I love it. I love doing it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't have any other job. If you told my school teachers that I get paid to talk, they would think you're crazy. And so,
mm.
because they just throw things at me to shut me up when I was in school. Like, Charlie, get the hell out of the.
Maybe they wouldn't be surprised.
Because I wouldn't
I mean,
shut up in school.
Well, there it is.
There it is. Yeah. I just always had something to
what's
say.
Still
what's
talk.
great about that is you're essentially making money by being you.
Mm.
It's like Joe Rogan. He literally just hops on a podcast and it's a hang. I mean, it's actually more
That's
of
what
like
I'm
a
trying to do here. So I got Phil. I would love to have you here. Like, we built out this room. In a non COVID world, there'd be couches here. We'd be smoking weed. It'd be great.
yeah. I mean, it's
Legally, of course. It's Florida.
legally.
You need to have your license. But Patrick,
I,
what are you working on this week that you're excited about? It's Monday morning. What do you got going on this week that you really want to get done that's like exciting you?
yeah. So I'm onboarding a ton of freeholders. So I'm doing like
Oh, it's a
outreach.
great name, Freeholders.
Yeah. Thank you.
Tell us where you got
Yeah. So
after you tell us, and I'm gonna get yelled at for not letting you speak, but after you tell us what you're working on this week, tell us where you got the name of the company.
oh sure. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely get to that. So yeah. So this week I'm onboarding a ton of freeholders. Um I'm implementing hodl score. So it's like it'll be live in production. So the the folks who are in the freehold right now will begin getting emails with their hodl score and why they have a hodl score like the way they do. Some people have unhodled accidentally. Some people unhodled because they had to spend. Um, but a lot of people have been hodling and earning and having an impact, and they're starting to build their reputation. So um, we want to reward that by letting them know
I need
kind
to
of
put
like
it in
what
there.
that score is and allow that to benefit them for future earning. The other thing I'm launching is this week is it's kind of like it's like a job board. So folks in the Freehold can see who's working on what tasks, so they can like work with their friends and complete sort of challenges as a community. So for example, like if you want to get integrated in like the top 50 wallets, for example, and you could coordinate like 300 people to try to get those integrations to happen, that's like a pretty good system if it works. But those folks have to like work with each other, make sure they're
Yeah.
coordinating with each other to make sure that happens. So, anyways, the name Freehold. Yeah, my wife works in branding and design, and she offered me like a couple hundred names. I I highlighted like 5 of them. And Freehold made it to the top. I love Freehold because the definition of Freehold is essentially like the legal right to own property in a specific place, with the right to release it at your will. And that to me is like crypto ownership. It's like you hold the keys, no one can rip those out of your hands. And yeah, and since Freehold is like a proof of hodl access controlled community, it's almost like a virtual version of the kind
So
of
for
like
example, if you go to like Delaware and you want to buy a beach house, you can't buy a property on the beach. Hell, you can't even buy a property. You can't own land. I don't even think in some of these cities at all. Instead, you get a 99-year freehold. And in fact, that's how it is in like like in Amsterdam too, I know. What
that's like a leasehold.
It's like a leasehold.
All
And now-
property in China is freehold.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I always assume, my ignorance assumed that you can own land. There's only one way. You buy a piece of land, you own it, as long as you pay property taxes on it.
They own it for 99 years.
All
or
land in
something like
China? I didn't know that. Yeah, around the world there are all these different mechanisms. So freehold is one of the fairest ways because you can also release it and sell it to someone else as long as there's time left on it. You can extend it, I think. There's a lot of different ways. It's cool.
In theory, it belongs to the people.
It belongs to the people with access to the person.
Right.
Yeah, in theory.
Yeah, that's like I mean, ownership of land is an illusion. Like governments can just take it away from you at any point. I'd say like crypto is actually more easily owned by individuals than land. It's harder to pry it from your cold dead hands.
True.
The I was gonna comment. Yeah, so like leasehold, I believe is kind of like you don't have full ownership. Someone can take it from you. You're kind of like leasing. Freehold is you own the land and really no one can take it away from you. That's like the pure freehold concept.
Patrick, thank you so much for coming on Untold Stories today and teaching us about freehold and our views on money. I think there was a point where the three of us were just silent thinking about something that you said. I love when that happens. Thank you.
Me too. I love learning too. I appreciate thanks for having me on the podcast. This is great. And thanks for all the work you've done, getting folks onboarded into Bitcoin, especially crypto generally.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Take care, guys.